evening, you're watching Estuary News. I'm Hugh Riches. Coming up tonight, we'll have a roundup of the latest news headlines, and in the sport, we'll be hearing from Hull City head coach Nigel Adkins and Grimsby Town manager Russell Slade ahead of this weekend's games. And I'll be reviewing the week's regional papers with my guest today, the Reverend Peter Vickers. Today is the last day residents across the East Riding can have their say on proposals to shake up sheltered housing schemes. East Riding Council is currently considering a number of options, including the introduction of on-call supervisors. It wants to change the service to promote independence and reduce social isolation. The council says no decision has yet been made. Scampton Air Show will not go ahead this year. 50,000 people visited RAF Scampton in September as part of a new event. However, visitor numbers were down last year and the air show made a loss. North East Lincolnshire Council has been awarded over £5 million to help businesses flourish across the borough. The authority won £5.4 million from the European Development Fund to boost renewable energy in small and medium-sized enterprises. The funding will form part of a £9.2 million project to set up a one-stop shop to provide energy and low-carbon services for the enterprises. It will also facilitate large-scale investment in public infrastructure. The project will be delivered over the next 3 years, starting in April 2018. An NHS team is leading its trust's efforts to become more environmentally friendly. Humber NHS Foundation Trust has adopted its first Green Champion. Mike Scott will encourage colleagues from services in the trust to cut down on energy use and waste. He says he intends to urge staff to switch off unneeded lights, cut the mains power to unused computers and turn off all switches before going home. The scheme is part of the trust's Trust in Green environmental campaign. More news from the NHS. A new scheme for women who've had a caesarean section is being offered support from a new midwifery service. It's designed to help those women prepare for their next babies. Hull Women and Children's Hospital is setting up the new service to give women additional support, information and advice, as Jennifer Moverley, junior sister at the hospital, explains.
It's called a BAC clinic, which stands for birth after caesarean. So it's designed for ladies that have had a caesarean with a previous pregnancy and they're now pregnant again. Currently our service, these ladies are not seen until they're about 36 weeks by their consultant in the clinic. So it's a long time from being pregnant to making that decision, having that discussion about what's going to happen this time. A lot of other trusts in the area do already have one, and we went to Huddersfield Hospital, spoke to the consultant midwife that runs it there, and it's always been evaluated really, really well by the ladies. The massive satisfaction levels, and it's not to do with changing the rates of caesarean sections. It's about the satisfaction for women. I think it's having the time, because a lot of the appointments there, obviously it's a very busy hospital, and they sometimes there's this clinical things to do in that appointment as well, and they don't often have time to discuss things that was possibly a traumatic delivery in a previous. So it's having that time with the midwife, and it's a nice long appointment as well to talk about previously and then again start discussing things for this time around.
Time now to have a look through the week's papers with my guest, the Reverend Peter Vickers. Peter, thank you so much for coming in. Very good to see you here as always.
That's okay.
How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Yes, getting ready for all the festivities and everything else. So.
I take it as a member of the clergy of the Church of England, you'll spend Christmas Day by getting absolutely sloshed on eggnog in the morning and watching the Bond movie at night.
Oh, you've been watching The Vicar of Dibley and lots of Brussels sprouts. Not quite. I will wait until after the services before the eggnog comes out.
You have a bit of a professional duty, I
suspect.
There is.
Yes, there is.
Okay. What have you found in the papers?
Well, I've got to say that one of the things that I like normally at this time of year are the lighter stories in the papers, and there seems to be a dearth of them this particular time.
It's a bit of a gloomy season, isn't it?
It seems to be, one way or another. But one of the things that struck me from the Grimsby Telegraph was the fact that the high-rise flats, known to us all, are due to come down within weeks.
Now, these are the tower blocks on the East Marsh in Grimsby.
That's the one. They're due to start coming down in January, and they say they'll use the old methods of bit by bit, but also using explosives as well. My worry, and I know the worry of a few, is the fact that actually the rebroadcasting units for a lot of mobile phones were on top of those.
Yes.
And I've not heard what they're doing with them. And the other thing is, of course, that they're pulling them down with no plans at all of what they're going to do with the land once they've actually pulled them down, which is also a worry.
This is Shoreline Housing Association.
Yeah.
The blocks of flats were too expensive to maintain. They weren't earning their own way, as it were. Some people were very fond of them.
Oh, yes.
And the views from the top, of course, are spectacular. But Shoreline, they can't afford to keep them up, and there's been quite a lot of resistance to that.
Yes, there has. There's been resistance, and I've talked to some of the people that have lived in them, and they love them. Totally love them. As you say, the view from when you're looking out of your living room window over the Humber, you pay thousands for that elsewhere.
Well, these are the penthouses of Grimsby, aren't they?
Well, they are, yes. But it will be interesting to see just what the NELC or Shoreline or whoever do with the land once they've actually demolished them, which I think it says take about 12 months to do, so it's not going to happen quickly.
Anybody making television loves demolitions, because you get that fantastic moment where you get sort of 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, plunge down the lever, and there's a great explosion, everything comes tumbling down. Much more boring if they do it brick by brick with a couple of hammers.
Unless it's that stadium that they tried to do recently, and
yes,
it just kind of went, no, I'm not falling.
That was a bit disappointing. There's been a sort of interesting reversion of views, isn't there? When tower blocks were first being built in the 1960s, by the 1970s and 1980s, we absolutely reviled them. We regretted the loss of the streets, that
Yes.
these vertical streets didn't work, they weren't the same communities, they were absolutely horrible. And now we get into the 21st century and we're losing the tower blocks, we miss them, and we're thinking
Yes.
that we're nostalgic about that. Are we just always going to be one generation behind ourselves? We're always going to think it was much better when we were young?
Maybe. I do remember the time that, yes, I am old enough to remember the time of what the tower blocks were replacing. I mean, the slum clearances and the back-to-backs with the outside toilet and everything else. So I can see why people rejoiced in getting out of that. But the payback was the missed out on the socialising.
Yeah.
And you become used to the socialising, you become used to having what you've got, and then it's removed. There's a saying in the church that you'll never be as good as the vicar that's gone.
Oh, really?
The vicar you're replacing might have been hated at the time, but you'll never be as good as he was. So maybe it's a similar sort of thing.
Just the nature of human nature. I've never seen what's wrong with outside toilets and an appropriate and efficient use of the sports pages.
Well, maybe.
Next one, culture not the only link between Hull and Coventry. This is
Yes.
a city of culture story.
Our viewers will have seen, of course, that actually Coventry is going to be the next city of culture. The one thing that I didn't realise are the such strong links between Hull as a city and Coventry as a city. One of the things that I've been watching this week, I don't know if other people have seen it, is the programme on the Blitz. And the first in the series was the Blitz in Hull. And they even numbered the bombs and they concentrated on certain families. And another one in the same series was Coventry in the Blitz. Well, Coventry, of course, with the cathedral and its cross of nails and its whole movement for peace since then has become famous. But that's only one of the links between. I mean, there are numerous cars. The Humber.
The Humber?
Humber car.
That was built in Coventry, was
It was
it?
built in Coventry.
It's a bit of a regrettable link, though, isn't it? The Blitz. It's
Well,
not a very
yeah,
cheerful subject.
If I can take it back just for a minute, there's also some more positive things. Yes, you got Philip Larkin.
Of course, he was from Coventry
He
and
was
worked
from
in
Coventry
Hull.
and worked in Hull.
And he's not very cheerful, though, either, is he, really?
Well, but he's culture.
He is, indeed.
And
yes.
he's played a very big part in Hull's city of culture in one way or another. He's certainly been used, his name's been bandied around quite a lot, and I'm guessing that Coventry may well do something similar, but we shall wait and see.
We all know what your mum and your dad did. They don't mean to, but they do.
Yeah. Yes, okay.
Philip Larkin, wonderful librarian, of course,
Yes.
librarian at Hull University.
And I'm sure your viewers will know, I'm a cummer-inner, I admit it, Chris Chilton.
Yes.
Evidently, he's linked. It's hard to find the bigger Hull City legend than Chris Chilton.
Peter, I'm sorry, I've never heard of Chris Chilton.
No, neither have I. Well, let's move on then.
Okay.
I was hoping that you might have.
Who is Chris Chilton?
He was a footballer.
Oh, right. Well, fair enough. That's rather outside my expertise, I'm afraid. Now, lighting up for life. What's this story?
Christmas lights.
Ah, yes.
I love a good lighting up, and I love the way that towns and cities make themselves so much look like Christmas, and this is one that actually, it was the lighting up of turning on of the Christmas lights in Bridlington, and it was by a young girl called Eve Gascoigne who actually was turning on the lights. Now Eve is not well, and they'd organised a massive fundraising event or events to raise money for her to go abroad to have some proton beam therapy.
Right.
It turns out that actually the NHS changed their minds, and they have done the therapy. They did the therapy in the UK, but it's an inspiration, I think, that actually even in the midst of all this, someone as young as Eve acted as an example to rise above all that was going on, and to be the focus to actually turn on a town's lights to become
brilliant.
the focus of the positiveness of Christmas.
Well, indeed, and positive is the right word if you're talking about protons. The existence of such a thing as proton beam therapy is itself rather inspiring and hopeful, isn't it?
Well, it is. It's a long way from when I was Eve's age. But
Peter,
there we
we're
go.
going to have to stop there, rather inspiring note. We're going to have to stop there and go to the break. Come back after the break. We'll have a little bit more of a look at the papers, and we'll have a roundup of all the latest sports news. Welcome back. You're watching Estuary News. Still to come tonight, we'll be hearing from both the Hull City and Grimsby Town managers ahead of this weekend's games in the sports news with Jack. And still with me in the studio is the Reverend Peter Vickers as we continue our look at the regional papers. Peter, you found another story here. This is a Royal Naval story.
Yeah, this is coming from the Scunthorpe Telegraph, and I've got an attachment to what is now British Steel in Scunthorpe. I was their chaplain during the days of Tata and during the days of the takeover. To see that actually the new aircraft carriers, that one was named by the Queen and recently the Queen Elizabeth and its sister ship, the Prince of Wales, are both made with an awful lot of steel that comes out of Scunthorpe.
Well, I would imagine there's quite a lot of steel in an aircraft carrier.
I would have thought so. It's quite a few thousand tons, but it's a nice positive story, and it's one of those that's taken so long to develop because, of course, you can't just produce steel at the drop of a hat. The contract for this was signed many years ago, and it was part of a contract that was signed with the Ministry of Defence. And it's nice to see that coming to fruition, and it's good to see that, along with so many other things, there is still a good name coming out of Scunthorpe and the steelworks there.
Well, absolutely, and it's not only the steel for very high quality specialist steel, sort of weapons grade, as it were, steel in terms of the aircraft carriers. Scunthorpe's also famous because it makes the best railway tracks.
Yes, and actually to see it being produced is phenomenal.
Yeah, there's something amazing about molten metal, isn't there? That,
and just being rolled and shaped, and I think in the days that I was there was something like 3 people running the whole of the production shed. It was
Really?
Computerised.
Well, that's a pity, though, isn't it? Because this is an industry that you would hope creates a great deal of employment. If it only takes 3 people to make enough metal for an aircraft carrier.
Well, aircraft carrier, I don't know. The rail shed, when it goes wrong, then there's a lot more people there. But yes, I'm very pleased to see that. Good news for Scunthorpe, good news for the steelworks.
Slightly odd experience, I would imagine, naming a ship after yourself as you smash that bottle of champagne across her bows.
I would have thought so, especially when it's something as big as an aircraft carrier.
Yes,
something svelte as a yacht or something.
Not terribly flattering.
No.
But equally, they're both the HMS Queen Elizabeth and HMS Prince of Wales, aircraft carriers without aircraft.
Yes, and the aircraft are still actually at the development stage, if I'm not mistaken.
Not to be on deck until 2020.
Something like. And only then can she actually start the beat-up trials to do the job that she's going to be doing.
So another couple of years of the Royal Navy just swanning around, maybe going to beautiful cities and ports, a little bit of quoits on the deck.
Being ex-army, I'd love to agree with you. But
sunbathing and...
No, I think there's an awful lot of things that they've got to do before they get to that stage.
Right, so I'd just like to pick one story here, talking of the military and of the Royal Navy. This is a D-Day hero honoured by French President. This is a man from Cleethorpes, Walter Marshall, 92 years old, who was involved, and don't mean to mock the Royal Navy, which I tremendously admire, he was involved in naval intelligence in the approaches to D-Day in 1944. He was behind enemy lines in France, operating there, gathering intelligence to help for the invasion of D-Day, and he, with a sort of astonishing courage that nobody who has not engaged in warfare, I suspect, could ever imagine, and then was involved in the invasion itself on D-Day. He's been given made a chevalier, a knight of the Légion d'honneur, in France by President Macron. President Macron, of course, would not be born for another 30 or 40 years after D-Day. Very young man. But Walter Marshall, and the President Macron says, as we contemplate this Europe of peace, we must never forget the heroes like you who came from Britain and the Commonwealth to begin the liberation of Europe by liberating France. Now, that suggests in this Brexit world that there is at least an affection still between the Europeans and the French, especially, and the British.
Yes.
But this attempt, you've been an army chaplain, this aspect of courage that this gentleman has clearly had back all those years ago, and this aspect of knowing that the people you're fighting really are just bad. There's no ambiguity about it, that there is a purpose to your existence in fighting something that is unambiguously bad. Have we lost something?
How do you mean lost? You mean lost the actual identifying of things that are worth fighting for?
Lost something in that there's an aspect in which our existence no longer has quite as easily identifiable a purpose as it had in the 1940s.
Yes, and some would actually say, thank goodness that's the way it's gone. That actually those who are capable of that kind of evil are not allowed to flourish in the same way, to grow in the same way. I mean, Hitler, National Socialism didn't just grow overnight. It was over the decade of the 1930s. And
let's just do one more story, Peter, because I want to end on a more cheerful note than that one. So what's the duck racing one?
The duck racing, yes. If
very quickly,
you fancy going to Market Raisin New Year's Day, there's a New Year's Day duck race going to happen.
In Market Raisin?
In Market Raisin.
That's the place to be. Peter, thank you so much. Here's Jack with all the sports.
In the football, Hull City are preparing for the long trip to South Wales as they face high-flying Cardiff City in the late kick-off tomorrow. The Bluebirds are going strong this season. They're currently second in the Championship table behind league leaders Wolverhampton Wanderers. It's set to be a difficult first away game for Hull's new head coach Nigel Adkins. Cardiff haven't lost at home in the league this season. However, the Tigers' spirits will be lifted on the back of last week's 3-2 win against Brentford at the KCOM Stadium. Adkins says he's hoping the newfound positivity around the club can transfer onto the pitch tomorrow evening.
They'll be looking to keep their momentum going, so we know under no illusions it'll be a tough game, but obviously we'll be buoyed by the victory we've had in the last game and the confidence that can instill, but the camaraderie we've got and the positive mindset of everybody wanting to be part of what we're striving to achieve together. So we'll go there in a good frame of mind. Yes, there's players going to be unavailable, but every club's going to have that. But we're going to go there with a positive mindset, knowing it's going to be a very challenging game. But if we can just keep working on several elements that we're looking for in the process, then all being well, that gives us an opportunity to get a victory. But also it gives us another opportunity to keep building on what we're trying to achieve for the following games after that.
The game at the Cardiff City Stadium will start later than normal. Kick-off tomorrow is at 5:30. In League One, Scunthorpe United are back in action at Glanford Park this weekend. The Iron host MK Dons on Saturday, hoping to bounce back from the disappointing 1-0 defeat away to Walsall last time out. That defeat saw United slip from 3rd to 5th in the table, but they'll fancy their chances tomorrow against tomorrow's opponents, who've not won in 5 league games. Kick-off is at 3 o'clock. Meanwhile, Scunthorpe United midfielder Josh Morris has been awarded the EFL Goal of the Month award. The 26-year-old beat off competition from Oldham Athletics' Owen Doyle and Walsall's Erhan Oztumer to scoop the prize for November. He topped the poll with 47% of the public vote for his magnificent second goal in the 2-0 win against Charlton Athletic. Morris said it was an honour, a massive honour, to receive the award. In League Two, Grimsby Town are preparing for a tough trip to the joint league leaders tomorrow. The Mariners make the trip to Notts County and are expected to be backed by around 1,500 away supporters. Notts are currently second in the table to Luton Town, only on goal difference, and are unbeaten at home. However, Town manager Russell Slade feels the travelling Mariners fans will be crucial tomorrow afternoon.
Yeah, Lisa Piggott was telling me yesterday that they'd sold over 12 or 13. They're expecting maybe 15 to 1700, so I mean that's a fantastic turnout. But they always do away from home. They're magnificent, aren't they? They travel, they're passionate, and they get behind the team away from home. So let's hope we can stay in that game tomorrow and give a good account of ourselves.
Tomorrow's clash at Meadow Lane kicks off at 3 o'clock. And finally, don't forget, Estuary TV will be bringing you live rugby union coverage tomorrow. We'll be bringing you all the action as Hull take on Pocklington at the Ferrens ground in the North Premier Division. Hull go into the game having won their last 5 league matches, so should approach the game with confidence. When the two sides last met, Hull beat Pocklington by 30 points to 0 back in September. Estuary TV's coverage begins this Saturday the 16th of December at 1 o'clock and runs through till 4 p.m. That's all for this week's sport. Back to Hugh in the studio.
Thank you very much, Jack, and many thanks to Peter Vickers for coming in and doing such a splendid news review. If you'd like to get in contact with us for any reason, then the details should be on screen now. You can go via Twitter or Facebook or email news@estuary.tv or phone Grimsby 01472315553, or you can write to us at Estuary TV, Nuns Corner, Grimsby, North East Lincolnshire, DN345BQ. I am going away. Luke will be looking after you next week. You'll be in his extremely capable hands. Until then, have a great weekend. Until Monday, and from me until the new year, good evening.